Welcome to the Cheap Seats, brought to you by overpriced, outsold arenas where nobody can afford tickets. So we all sit in the cheap seats. I'm AJ, this is Brian, this is Brandon. We're going to get right into things, make it real simple. We're new to this, and we're not journalists, we're fans. We love hoops, we love playing, but even more than that, we love talking about it and putting a normal person's perspective on it. So we're not getting paid by anybody, we're just having a good old time discussing basketball, primarily NBA. What's going on right now? Free agency. Free agency everywhere. Went live this morning and we've already had a bunch of big deals, and we're going to start off with Brian and see what he's got to say.
Well, it looks like a lot of teams have stand pat here in the league. Nicholas Batum, Andre Drummond, they are staying with their teams. We have Nicholas Batum with a $120 million deal, league sources say, and he's going to stay with Charlotte. It's not going anywhere. Andre Drummond, $130 million range. So we're starting to get some big dollars going on.
But we knew that was coming because of the cap growth.
Correct. So, I believe there's some other news out there. Bradley Beal, we were talking about him a little bit.
Yeah, one of the first to sign. And I did not see the numbers for him, but it looks like he was going to get a max deal from Washington.
Okay.
So, Brandon, what are your thoughts on some of the big names?
The big names right now, I think everybody's staying pat with waiting for KD, obviously. This whole era of like super teams and such, I'm not sure that that's going to continue forward. I think chemistry plays a bigger role. Golden State, I think, shows that. You know, they do have big name people, but their chemistry is so high that they're able to compete with teams that they may not match up well against.
I would agree with that. So, when you think about the KD situation, and you look at it from the larger perspective, yeah, they're saying that he's probably going to stay with OKC, but say he does make the move to a Golden State, which was the rumored his primary pick, what does that do for everybody else? And where does that leave Golden State?
I think it'll help Golden State. Obviously, they won the most games ever last year. Are they going to win more with them? I don't know. It's going to be a growing curve because they're all used to having the ball at some point. KD, you know, he kind of is more of a stationary player, but can slash, can shoot. So he's an interesting dynamic with that team, and I'm not sure exactly where he fits in with those guys and how they play at this point.
Well, and one of the key points in it, I looked up yesterday, Harrison Barnes, Festus Ezeli both got qualifying offers from the Warriors. If they were going to go after KD heavily, they're going to have to move somebody.
Right.
Now, they let a couple guys go for free agency, but ultimately they still have their team together. And in order to get the cap space, they've got to let somebody go, and it's got to be Barnes is the primary one.
Right.
Either that or Iguodala,
Absolutely.
because those are the guys making the money there. So the fact that they offered the qualifying numbers to Barnes, is that a smokescreen to pull off some type of a sign and trade, or is it them saying we know we're not going to get KD here or we're not really pursuing him?
I feel like it's more the latter, where they feel like, hey, KD's probably not going to come here. Because I do agree, we talked earlier about KD's probably going to do the 1 year with the opt-out clause. So I think Golden State sees that and they're positioning themselves for next year to maybe do a sign and trade with KD and maybe package some of those guys with them.
What do you think, Brett?
Yeah, I think Harrison Barnes is the tricky piece of the wheel for Golden State. They want to keep him happy just in case, right? And as a player who's won a championship and helped them get to the finals next year as well, I would feel a little bit slighted if I was him. I mean, that's a big problem for those guys. So yeah, maybe it's a bit of a smoke screen. It could be.
But he's got a production issue.
In the finals.
In the finals.
But that was one series.
Right.
It was one
Over
series.
a body of work.
But at the same time, you look at what Cleveland did, and that same discussion came out about Kevin Love. In the finals, he basically was non-existent except for 1 or 2 games, which was similar to Barnes. So I think it was Mike, and Mike was talking about it a few weeks ago, was, well, do they keep Kevin Love, or do they let him go because he's not the right guy for the finals? And you look at Barnes, you look at the same thing. On an overall scale, if Barnes is gone from Golden State, does that hurt them?
That's a good question. He was a starter, right? He took away Iggy's spot, so Andre Iguodala became a sixth man
Right.
based on that. I think about the Spurs and Manu Ginobili being like a perpetual sixth man. That was done by design, but not because of another player. I look at Golden State Warriors' decision to invest in Harrison Barnes as some type of, athlete of the future, like a LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that they're banking on him being available if they don't have a Kevin Durant. Otherwise, what direction do they go? Are they going at? I remember that they were talking about not Thomas Cephalosha, but who just got signed by Charlotte. Batum. They were talking about maybe going after him, another wing that could fill that slot. There's not a lot of folks that can do that over the long haul in the one series. And I understand what you're saying about Kevin Love. That's a really good comparison. They're already still talking about moving him. I understand that. I think they overreact to one series.
Right.
If that guy is worth a little bit of something, then you need to make sure that you're evaluating everything. But
But it's about the rings.
it's about the rings.
It's about the rings.
It's about the rings.
So on that, go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say, I think Harrison Barnes' upside is so huge that if he does show up, he brings a lot to the table. You're not spending the max money that you would get Kevin Durant to do that.
Right. I want to go back. You mentioned the Golden State system and Kevin Durant, and kind of finish off the Durant thing for now. But I think he actually would fit really well into the Golden State system because of the rub screens, the off-ball screens, that kind of movement. Because he's good with the ball in his hands, he really is. But not to compare the two on the same level of talent, but much like a Klay Thompson, Durant's not a driver.
Right.
Thompson, when he drives with hesitation. He doesn't drive because he's planning on finishing. He drives because he's trying to either create space or get somebody else open. If it happens to be a layup, he's going to take it, but he's not trying to go in and thunder it on somebody.
Right.
Durant, he can do that, but that's not his game. So you get him running through those 2, 3, 4 off-ball screens and the rub screens off the ball like they do with Curry and with Thompson and with everybody else, Draymond. I mean, I think that makes him a much more powerful player because then you have him in a just unbelievable series of mismatches. But we'll see where it goes from there.
I do like that point, especially because Westbrook's a different type of point guard than Curry and Thompson, running the guards. So
Extremely different. And that's the other part of the tipping point for KD is Westbrook's a free agent next year. And there's a high likelihood that he's talking about going somewhere else.
Right.
Most likely LA. I think he'd be a phenomenal fit there, but Durant's got to obviously consider that. We were just talking about it before we set everything up. What if Durant did a LeBron type scenario where he signs a 2-year deal with a 1-year player option at max money, and if Westbrook leaves, then he's free to go. Kind of thing.
This LA Laker thing. This this is not the Jerry West era anymore. Okay, that's been a common theme in the NBA for about 30, 40 years now. Boston Celtics, LA Lakers, New York Knicks. Everyone talks about those as being key markets. The Thunder are now a key market. I mean, they're making tons of money with those 2 jersey sellers over there. They don't have problems making money in OKC as a small market. San Antonio got problems, I think, being popular. OKC don't have that problem. Durant, that's I think why his decision is a little bit easier because they say, you go to a larger market, you make more money. He's like, I'm already making $200 million a year, or $20 million, contract with Nike. I'm doing fine. That's not where it's at. It's about playing ball. Russell Westbrook going to LA, why would he have fancy dreams doing it? I understand that there's a connection there with college and things of that nature. I get that. That's what they said about Durant to Washington Wizards. But this is real life.
Right.
You got to go to an organization that's a bumbling organization, right? And no disrespect to the Buss family and all that, but they don't know what they're doing right now. Ever since Jerry West has left that organization and Dr. Buss died, this ship has been kind of going downhill. So I don't think that's a viable rumor. I know that most of the professional NBA analysts, you always want to bring that particular thing up because of the Kobe thing, the Shaq thing. They had Poole back in the 90s and the 2000s. That Poole is dead.
Well, I'll agree with you there. I think the LA scenario, you end up looking at it from the perspective of Westbrook is capable of carrying the team himself. sharing the spotlight with Kevin Durant. They have their own little super team there with two legitimate superstars. If Westbrook goes to another team, i.e. LA, where he would be automatically the best player on the team, without a doubt. He goes into a situation with a young coach in Luke Walton and a bunch of guys that are young and inexperienced and would basically bow to him from a playing standpoint. He's the instantaneous floor leader in a situation where he now becomes the star for maybe the next 5 years of what can be the next Showtime series. But again, that's all down the road and speculation. Looking at the other stuff that we've got, now you mentioned the Knicks and that little snippet, and that it brings up the next fun point.
Right.
We got Joakim Noah looking at 4 years and $72 million with the Knicks. Good, bad, otherwise. Brandon?
I think it could be a good fit, especially he's got familiarity with Rose. That definitely helps. I think he's not a ball dominant player, so I think that helps Carmelo. So I think it gives him some flexibility. He's definitely going to bring a toughness to that team that they may not have had this entire time.
I don't know if you guys ever saw that documentary. It has something to do with LeBron, Carmelo, and then the kid that never made it to the league now. He was like 30-something years old, and he was supposed to, Lenny was his name, I don't know. You had to look up, it's a great basketball thing.
Okay.
Joakim Noah's in that.
Yeah.
They all came up together and was playing against each other, and this guy was the lead guy. I think what you said is correct. He does play off very well for Carmelo. His style of play, we talked about this on the Facebook page yesterday. I really think his attitude, just like Thibodeau in Minnesota, I think his attitude can bring a culture of winning. Does that mean that they are in the Eastern Conference Finals? That is a good argument. We'll see how all this plays out, trades, free agency rumors, and things of that nature. But Joakim Noah is a flat-out winner with a hard work ethic, like a Ben Wallace and some of the others of those ilks. He plays hard. Draymond Green. He plays hard all day, every day. He brings that culture. He's not giving up till to the final bell. And so I feel like it gives him a fighting chance. And he's not going to try to, like I said, take up a lot of ball time, and that gives those other guys time to play off so they can make other moves. Derrick Rose, I don't know if that was coming up too soon. That, they're gambling. It's a great gamble. It's a great gamble for them, but I don't know how much that impacts the Knicks right now.
Derrick Rose is an easy gamble at this point. It's a 1-year contract. You're not losing a whole lot. Nobody's expecting the Knicks to be in the finals this year, and maybe he brings them to the playoffs and gets them a little bit further.
I saw a question that really was intriguing about Derrick Rose.
What's that?
Will he be the first MVP ever to not make it to the Hall of Fame? I was like, that's a pretty good question.
I think it's a valid question. I think when you look at the Knicks, you've got somebody who, Jackson is basically trying to recreate his old spectacular systems where he's had done in the past.
Greatest era of basketball.
Yeah,
I'm biased. But yeah.
We all are. Bring them all back. Now he's trying to recreate that, and I think by bringing Rose to New York, bringing Noah to New York, I think I just said that, New York. Your point about Noah, I heard something. I think it was this morning on Mike and Mike. They were pointing out the absurdity of the contract for him. Is he worth that? I think actually it was Golick that pointed out that it was an insane amount of money. Is he worth it? Yada yada. But they were comparing different sports like soccer and football, and they got into talking about how football's 53-man roster. All those guys are making bank, but you got guys in the bottom of the rung making nothing. And that made me think for a second. Well, what are Noah's specialties? Defense, rebounding, pick setting, team play. He can gel a team together, and his hustle and attitude will change the mentality of the guys he's playing with. So, when you look at the value of somebody, is it about the fact that he scores 6 points a game? Or much like a defensive lineman who you don't notice during the football game, unless you're watching for the defensive lineman, you don't notice them until they get a sack or when they're getting a tackle. But that defensive lineman is getting more money than half the guys on the team because of his defense. Now, basketball, you gotta play both ways, right? But go back to the greatest era that we were talking about.
Right.
One of the guys that was one of the biggest heroes for, was it 5 titles? 2 in Detroit, 3 in Chicago. He didn't know how to put the ball in the basket when he was in the NBA. Dennis Rodman.
That's right.
He got rebounds, he played defense, he made great passes, he did everything that it doesn't show on a stat sheet.
That's right.
And he got paid.
He was a utility guy, and he's a Hall of Famer.
And Noah's in that same ilk. He doesn't have the same prowess that Rodman had, but he is of that same ilk. So is it worth it to do that? Well, you've got offense in Porzingis, you've got offense in Anthony if he figures out how to pass the ball. You've got offense in Rose. They're talking. We were looking at this. They're talking about going after Eric Gordon
Oh, wow.
to bring him in as
That's
a
a good
tutor.
pickup, yeah. Is he free agent?
Yeah.
He is a free agent.
Good, good.
So you add Eric Gordon into that. I mean, their bench is atrocious, but you at least end up with a decent starting 5 that should be able to compete relatively well in the East. So then, tailing off some of the big names, Dwayne Wade opted out. There's
As always.
there's so much speculation about that whole scenario. With Whiteside re-signing, I don't see Wade going anywhere. I don't. I think he's probably trying to get more money. I mean, he's been beat up for his career. His body's not what it was 5 years ago, and why not cash in when you can? Riley will pay him to keep him. He's been there his whole career.
Or is Dwayne Wade doing what Tim Duncan has done and Dirk Nowitzki has done? He's trying to have input into the process. What's different about the way Dirk does it and the way Tim does it is that it's always in line with the front office. It's always a positive story, a positive spin.
Mm-hmm.
When Dwayne Wade has opted out, sometimes it's like, hey, he's helping us, he took a pay cut, and he's like, you guys should be thanking me. That's how the story is framed, right? That's what
Right.
we hear. I think, this is his way of getting in the front office. I don't know how Pat Riley works with him or not, but the way it's coming out in the public always makes it look messy for Dwayne Wade, because I don't think he's always looking for the most money. I think he's just trying to posture and position so that he can be kind of like this alpha male when those new guys come in. I am the guy. I am that guy. It's Wade County, y'all.
Brandon?
I mean, it's how the media spins it. Like Duncan and Nowitzki, quiet guys. You don't hear a lot about them. Wade, obviously, bringing LeBron down, Bosh down. It looks like he was the bad guy, with all those guys. And now, all of a sudden, he may be trying to do something good for his team, but they're spinning it as, well, he wants more money.
That's right.
All right, so moving on, Drummond signed with Pistons, or it looks like he's going to, for $130 million, 5 years. We talked about that.
Dwight, D12?
No, that's a good point,
Okay.
because, if Noah signs with New York, what does that do for Dwight Howard?
I honestly don't know where he can go at this point. We talked about maybe Chicago with Wade, and seeing how that would work out together. And I was like, well, maybe if Whiteside goes west, maybe Howard can go to Miami, but at this point, I don't see a good spot for him right now.
He's not getting max deal. He ain't getting max. He's tripping. Last person I thought that did this, and unfortunately he had a terrible, terrible record as well. It was a Trev Sprewell, man.
Oh, yeah.
Coaching, choking his coach, and then he got a resurgence. Him and Sam Cassell went to the Timberwolves. It was a great resurgence for that team. It was beautiful, and he opted out of a $20-something million deal. And it was like, I want more money. Dude, you old.
Yeah.
You're not the guy ever. And to start over at organization for any of these NBA guys, Derrick Rose even, right? Derrick Rose is an MVP caliber player, dude. The reason you got traded is because you're not the guy no more.
Yeah.
Shaq dictated his terms when he moved. A lot of people who dictate their terms, we talk about it. LeBron was an anomaly. He left. He flee. Very rarely does a marquee player leave his key market, right? That's not a really big thing. Carmelo, that was people like, really? You left Denver? That doesn't happen. These guys like Dwight who think he's worth, all that money. If money is really his goal, he made a huge mistake. Hopefully he'll get somewhere in the Joakim Noah. That's what I think. He's going to get the Joakim Noah kind of offer, and unfortunately he's going to be unhappy as he always is. Maybe he'll go back to the Pistons with Van Gundy. Be in his comfort zone.
No, like we have Drummond
He
and
can back him up.
wow.
Nothing against you, D. Howard. I like you.
Sorry.
You have fun and everything, but
Well, and you think about it though. Ever since he left Orlando, it's been a train wreck because he hasn't competed at the level he competed at in Orlando. He's fought through injuries. He's still not that old. I mean, he's not. I mean, he's even 30 yet.
he's got NBA. He got the Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, LeBron James mileage though. They started at 18.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, he does. I know he came right
He's
out of
old.
high school. He's old for the NBA
Mhm.
body wise, but that said, he still has. I mean, if you look at him, he's still in good shape, and if he stays healthy, he still has a good 5 years left on him. But where's his production? And
Mhm.
his offensive game never improved to the point that he could be an offensive focal point. He could never have become a Tim Duncan. He never had the prowess to go down low and post somebody up the way that those guys did, because the guys that started guarding him were bigger, stronger, or just as big, just as quick. And case in point, Houston versus the Clippers, I'll take DeAndre Jordan in that matchup 9 out of 10 times. You put Howard versus DeAndre Jordan one-on-one on the block, Howard's not going to score. Jordan's going to overtake him. I'll take Drummond over Howard right now. just
Oh,
because-
his upswing. Yeah.
because of all the, I mean, lack of mileage, Drummond's young, but from his talent point, Drummond can't shoot free throws to save his life, but if he gets near the rim, he finishes.
Right.
Mhm.
And where I see Dwight Howard, he needs to have somebody that can set him up the way that Harden has been able to do that. Now, given Harden's going to take 20 more shots than he is, but in order for him to get 20 and 10, they need to come off passes from other guys, or they need to be alley-oops on breaks and stuff, or he needs to get a rebound putback, because he's just not a go-to offensive player. So that limits his upside there. And
He's not.
and on defense, I don't see him. He doesn't have the Noah hustle.
He doesn't.
So where does he, like
He
Brandon?
doesn't.
I agree with Brandon. Where does he fit?
No, he doesn't. But it's a mindset. Defense is a mindset, and the way you fit in with teams. Dennis Rodman was. We talked about him a little bit earlier. He was an enigma, the kind of guy that was hard to fit in until Phil Jackson found him. Sometimes people need that, right? I hear a rumor right now that they're talking to Dwight Howard. You know, Isaiah Thomas is saying, "Who wouldn't want a guy like that?" But I don't think Danny Ainge is going to give him max money. Again, he's going to get a $60 to $70 million deal, and he has to want it. And they're probably going to have conversations with him to figure out where he fits. I look at Serge Ibaka. He hung his hat on defense, then he became good offensively.
Yeah.
Where did the defense go? Like, some guys just can't focus on too many things at one time.
Mhm.
That's all I'm saying. It flashed a little bit in that last series, like, oh, that's the Serge Ibaka. He had like 3 or 4 blocks, but he hasn't been that guy for a long time. Dwight Howard has to want to be that guy, and he's wanted to be the offensive guy. But moving franchises, that is, you have to network with these people. You got to play basketball with them every single day. And when you leave this situation where you kind of have a little bit of power, you know, a little bit of influence, and now you got to start all over, he's gonna have problems unless he has that Phil Jackson-like, you know, intervention that he had Rodman.
Right. What about if he does go to Golden State, gets less money, goes to Golden State, has fun playing basketball, they're going to feed him, they're going to throw him alley-oops.
That's a lot of
You know.
alley-oops.
I'd say they would.
They would throw him a lot of
Does that
alley-oops.
really fit?
But then when he's having fun, he probably plays more defense. You know, he starts blocking shots again, starts doing
That's
that.
a good fit.
You think?
I like that fit.
See,
If he wants it.
If he wants
If he wants it, that would be a perfect, because Andrew Bogut is really overplaying in Golden State right now. He is, you know, he's a starter over there. And I'm not saying he wasn't before, but his production is low.
but then we go back to the other part of that discussion with Howard being, you've got Curry, Thompson, and Green are your main options. If Barnes is there, Barnes is number 4. That means Howard is as a 5th option, which is what Bogut is right now, and he plays that role perfectly because he sets the rub screens. He knows how to twist off the block, twist off the elbow, and he knows how to make those passes.
Yeah.
And he is a great passing center. You don't have that with Howard. The one that I did see.
The system makes him a better passer.
The system makes him a better. I agree with that. The one that makes sense with Howard is if Horford leaves Atlanta, Howard goes to Atlanta.
I don't disagree with that. But where does Horford go then? He's kind of in that same boat. Like,
Yeah, where does Horford go?
Well, Horford's been getting a lot of looks from a lot of teams because and given he is older, he's 30 or 31, but as he's proven the last 2 years, he has well improved his range. So he can go to a system where they put him in a stretch 4, they make him a 5, but he's pulling 3s because he's got mismatches left and right. That I never thought it would work with Millsap. They really proved me wrong because I thought they were redundant. I thought he and Millsap were redundant players, but they clearly were not. So if he does leave Atlanta, I think that opens the door for Howard to step in and go home. He's from Atlanta. And theoretically, he could end his career there because Atlanta has most of their good pieces left. And through the draft, the guy that they picked up from Baylor is a flat-out scorer, and he can shoot from anywhere. So I think there's really good potential if he were to go that route. That's just my take. So some of the other interesting things that have kind of reared their head are, we mentioned the Knicks going after Eric Gordon, and they're also interested in Courtney Lee and Austin Rivers. The Raptors, I guess, looked at sending Terrence Ross and a couple other players to Philadelphia for Nerlens Noel. And kind of out of left field, the Timberwolves are pursuing Brandon Bass. Which, I guess I don't know the Timberwolves well enough. I thought I did to know that they need a power forward. I didn't realize that they were lacking. They let Craig Smith go. So that leaves them kind of short at the power forward spot. And I don't see Timberwolves getting rid of anybody to pick up a big name player because they've got 3 budding stars. And I think they're going to be with Thibodeau there. I think Minnesota's going to tip some of the Western Conference teams on their ear this year.
Yeah, they will.
And make a big difference.
Yeah, they will. Utah was like one of those bowl teams in the West that just played rugged basketball. I think this pushes Minnesota ahead of them. Minnesota will be one of those teams where you hate to play them because they will potentially beat you every night. Period.
Yeah, they're not going to go out and win 60 games, but I have a feeling they'll be above 500,
For sure.
and they will be very much in contention with stuff.
I like the fact Andrew Wiggins wants to, prove LeBron wrong for getting rid of him. I like that kind of stuff in the NBA.
That's great.
Like some people don't take this as serious. They want to be buddy, friend. Come on, man. He has something to play for. He has something to work out in the offseason for. That's gonna be a good story in Minnesota. Especially after losing Flip Saunders last year and all that. They're moving in a new direction. Sometimes franchises is going to the abyss. Philadelphia, where have they been since they let go of Iggy? Both guys right there, they're not doing very well. It's really a good story, I think, over in Minnesota, a positive story that they have something going in the right direction with all those stars and a good vision.
Agreed. So if the Pelicans lose Eric Gordon, they and the Lakers apparently are showing interest in Evan Turner. I've never understood how Turner is even playing in the NBA, but that's just my opinion. I guess it doesn't have to look pretty as long as it works. But a lot of guys have gotten qualifying offers from their respective teams. Looks like Cleveland wants to hold on to Dellavedova. Montezumas is staying in, or looks like it's staying in Houston. Wayne Ellington and Shane Larkin, they've opted out. They're now unrestricted. And Allen Anderson, who has had one of those journeyman NBA careers, is getting looked at by the Cavs, 76ers, Lakers, and the Clippers. There's a good veteran backup guy there. And news of the day, literally news of the day, that this should take over the free agency discussion period. Carlos Boozer wants to come back.
Oh! Who do we want to play with?
I think he wants to just play anywhere.
It doesn't matter?
Boozer wants to play. Sign him. On the same note, Kent Bazemore is expecting 18 to 21 million, or 18 to 20 million, sorry,
Man.
per year.
balling.
What do you think about that, Vern?
I'm not real familiar with him as well as his game. Haven't seen a lot of him play. Seems a bit far-fetched, with some of these people and their contracts that they're getting
Just a
now.
little
But
bit.
the money's inflated now, so it's hard,
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think we're going to see a lot of guys come out of free agency that are in that lower middle tier of 7th, 8th guy on the bench, or 7th, 8th guy on the team making as much as one of the stars.
All right, Kent Bazemore, I mean, we talked about it already with some folks expecting a lot of money. I forget who we mentioned earlier that was in that Michael Redd conversation. Oh, it was our guy in Washington.
Beal.
Bill.
Yeah.
But this is that same era when the salary cap lifted, when Michael Redd, and unfortunately, I hate to say this, I said it back then, I probably said it to you back in the day, Joe Johnson is overpaid. He was overpaid. These shooting guards that are not Michael Kobe or Dwayne Wade, it's not right, man. They're Stacey Augmans. There's nothing against them. They're Stacey Augmans. They're second tier shooting guards that should not be getting that money. We talk about Jamal Crawford. Jamal Crawford is better than Kent Bazemore. Jamal Crawford is better than Bradley Beal. He ain't getting that money.
No, Jamal Crawford's also. I would take Crawford over Johnson from a production standpoint.
That's interesting.
No, well, what Johnson benefited from Steve Nash.
He did.
He got his max money because
A
of
lot of people benefited off of Steve
what.
Nash.
Yes, they did.
He was a multiplier.
But I'm having trouble remembering. But who played on the wing opposite Joe Johnson in Phoenix with Steve Nash?
I know you're talking about. He was kind of a bad boy. What was his name?
I can't.
Q. It was a Q. His name.
Quentin
Yeah,
Richardson.
Quentin Richardson.
Yes.
That's what it was.
Those guys both looked like all-stars because of Steve
That's
Nash.
right.
Joe Johnson scored tons of points and got looks from free agency left and right because of Steve Nash.
That's a good point.
You take him out of the system, you put him in a new system, you make him a focal point, and in Atlanta he was good. He wasn't great, he was close to all-star caliber, but from an overall league perspective, I don't think that Johnson ever really blossomed into what they expected, and he got way more money than he should have.
Correct.
But again, that goes to your point about, you talked about earlier, that's management.
It
They're
is
so desperate to hold on to a good player that they give him great money.
and it's mismanagement. What's going on with vision these days? We're in the cheap sheets. We're not just going to take cheap shots at the players like most everybody else. We're coming after you, general managers. We want your job.
Yeah.